Let's go!
Here!
Yeah! Ha! 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 Take this! Yeah! Yeah! Ha! 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 Yeah! Dance, water, dance!
Oh, mierda. Ok, de la forma.
Yeah, this is it!
Menos mal, de forma normal.
Yeah! Yeah, yeah, this is it! Yeah, yeah, this is it! Yeah, yeah, oh, this is it! Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, take this! Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, this is it! Uh-oh! Yeah, yeah, this is it! Yeah, let's go! Like it? Yeah, it's over! Like it? Water! It's over! Come on, keep to the beat! Oh, got it now! Dance, water, dance! Yeah, yeah, oh, back off! Uh-oh! Take this! It's over! Come on! Do it again. it on.
Oh no.
Gather! Take this! Yeah! 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 It's over! Yeah! 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 Take this! Yeah! It's over! Yeah! Yeah! Huh. It's over. Let's go. Right. This is it. Let's go. Gather. Yeah. Yeah. Back off! Donald! Okay. Yeah. Back off. Yeah, it's over. Gather. Yeah, it's over. Give me strength. Gather. Gather. Gather.
No, Eduardo, no sé si estás viendo este directo, pero dice este Mizu que ya te desmutió, así que vamos HD.
Ah, sí se me escuchó, puta madre. Es que justo estoy en festival, güey. En el festival de batalla. Es más fácil ganar experiencia ahí. A tener todos esos tiros de Godzilla. Por fin ya me desmotivó. No sé por qué me estaba motivado, pero me da igual. Al final me puse a jugar Roblox el otro. A la madre, se me complicó. Porque a los pendejos me estoy completando el pase en los estilos y no lo quiero. ¿Qué más me falta? Pues me dio un paro cardíaco. ¿Cómo me volaste, güey? ¿Sabes que se fue la luz?
¿Dónde?
¿Sabías que a las 3 de la mañana se fue la luz?
Tampoco.
Sí,
¿En todo Valle Hermoso?
en todo Valle Hermoso.
Pues aquí no se sintió. Mi computadora se había prendido y todo.
Ah, porque tuyo es una laptop.
Supongo.
Let's go.
No mames.
Care to try a taste of this? Try a taste of this?
Let's go. Yeah, gather. Gather.
Está chida la canción.
¿Sabes la que estás jugando?
Es la que jugamos tú y yo otra vez, el que tenía vocal, la tipo anime. Ahí la falla, chinga madre.
Yep, I can see it.
Es medio un perfecto.
Yeah, back off. Back off. This is it. Thunder. Ha. Ha.
Please, Master! Please! Please, Master! Please! Compose yourself!
Ah, bueno.
¿Qué?
Nada, es que...
Es que estoy concentrado, güey. ¿Qué esperas?
Ah,
Cuando estás en musical nunca hablas, literalmente.
pues yo
Hasta
estoy
me estás
jugando
jugando un
otra
bullet hell, güey. Cuando te vi estás jugando un bullet hell. No me acuerdo. Siguiente. September.
Please, Master!
Puse una canción de September aquí.
Ujú,
¿Sería la misma?
puta idea.
Dice aquí September. De Air, Wind and Fire. Sí, creo que es la misma.
Felicidades.
Please, master. Compose
Take
yourself.
this. It's over.
Please, master. Please, compose yourself.
Take this.
Please, master. Please, compose yourself.
Ah, no es.
Please, master.
Suena como bachata esta cosa.
Please, master. Please, compose
This
yourself.
is it. It's over. Yeah.
Pensé que era la de que aparece tipo las historias de
This is it.
tristes.
It's over. Yeah.
Pensé que era entonces. Ah, porque tiene dobles notas cada rato.
Yeah.
Odio las dobles notas. Porque confunden.
Algo, pero te acostumbras.
Realmente ponen dobles notas y luego ponen una nota. Y me confunde. Ah, es más fácil.
Donald's right, you know.
So it's all my fault.
Gorge, I didn't mean that.
Oh no! Hollow Bastion! You're right, Chipper. Sora, we better hurry.
Yeah.
No, antes que yo, lo hizo muy terrible. Ya perdí, pero me da igual.
¿Por qué tarde, bro? Perfecto. Recuerda el poder de... ¿Eh? ¿Tal vez? Sí.
Give me strength. Yeah. Yeah.
A la verga, que tengo que girar, no sabía. Es cierto, ¿qué páginas me faltaban? Nomás una. No, pero la otra.
Gather. Gather.
Sin querer me voy a subir de nivel, güey. Voy a poner la skin de mí, como me puse a Godzilla, güey.
There.
A ver,
Sí. Ya tengo la skin de Jace, de Kendo. En su último nivel, güey.
Yeah. Huh. Huh. Yeah.
¿Qué misiones de festival me faltan? Misiones de prestigio, no me faltan. de impulso me falta una y ya sobrevivir hasta la segunda ronda, al menos hasta la segunda ronda.
Yeah. Huh. 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 Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
Me hubiese dado más niveles para no conseguir el último super estilo que no me gustó en sí, es muy raro.
Raro, ¿en qué sentido?
Es que no le queda a la temática que es estilo japonés, no le queda. El azul y el rojo sí, más o menos, que representa casi este futurista, pero el otro es muy abstracto. Lo único que no supe del último se me gustó es la de... No sé cómo se llama la otra. Se me olvidó el nombre.
Y bueno,
Aquí está Jade. Que me gustó. Jade en sí. Vamos por el pelo blanco.
el pelo de Mo.
Yeah. Ha. Yeah. Ha.
Yo te aconsejo. A ver si jugamos Marvel Rivals tú y un día de estos. La madre.
Honestamente no me interesa el Marvel Rivals. No lo tengo instalado por lo mismo. Como quien dice, no es mi tipo de juego.
Sí, su tipo de juego no.
Tu tipo de juego no son los divertidos. Vamos.
No de Shooter Hero en sí. A mí casi que no tampoco juego, pero hoy tengo instalado. Cuando tengo ganas de jugar los estilos para desestresarme, Además, es más por el pobre de Jeff. Yo le hice mucho memes. El tiburón de tierra. Creo que había un Hulk que queriendo ahorcar a Jeff. Un meme que vi por el estilo. Pero bueno, que no se la mandé a Fátima. De por sí ya le se la mandaba uno que es un Hulk aplastando a Jeff con su ulti.
La mano.
Eso debe pasar.
La verga, me hacen un puntero de daño.
Grito masculino.
A huevo.
Sí, falta asterisco y se da el grito masculino. Asterisco. Ya después de esto, a ver si consigo otra cosa. En sí ya tendría todo del pase, ya me pasé el del pase de festival y eso.
Ya me pasé el pase.
Sí. Y casi me estoy comiendo el pase. El único que no me obtendría Godzilla sería el Arcee, ya que es ni casi nivel 200. Se vició con el Lego.
Gracias, madre. Sí, por favor.
Puse una canción de Bad Bunny aquí.
Sí, las 8 horas.
Una canción de Bad Bunny aquí, güey.
Tampoco.
Sí. Mía.
Mío.
Así se llama la canción, Mía.
Ah.
You will get these nuts.
It's over.
You will get these nuts. You will get these nuts.
Gather.
You will get these nuts. You will get these nuts.
Gather! Gather! Give me strength! Gather! 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 Give me strength! Gather! Gather!
Estoy en laptop, lo empecé debe ser más fácil. ¿Qué pasó?
Nada, me perdí. Es como señor pelos.
Sí, mi mami me trajo mi comida. ¿Qué puta madre tiene? ¿Qué puta madre tiene?
Gather! It's over! Yeah!
Ay, güey. ¿Señor Pelo está bien o no?
¿De qué sentido?
Si está subiendo algo, ¿puedo decirlo?
Pues lo último que subió fue un Monkey Show que al final, o sea, era un Monkey Show que nunca terminó, pero que ahorita sí terminó. Está muy gracioso. ¿Sí lo has visto?
No. No me mataron, no friegues. Ya se me acabó la parte, me mataron, güey. Ahora podemos intentar.
Hey, Sora!
Así subo más de nivel, güey. El Nix quería que le comprara la skin de Miku.
¿Te lo compraste?
No,
¿Por qué? A ver, dame una razón.
soy de tacaño. Tengo suficientes papos como unos 13,000, ahí ya se lo compro, pero como me lo gasté para el pase y el Miku normal.
A la madre.
Nada más tengo 11,500. Es más por ahora. Sí, me voy ya como 12,000 en el siguiente pase. Calculo porque 1000. A ver cuánto va a ser. Calculadora. 550 menos. Menos 1000 más lo que dan en el pase. 12,050. Digo que tenga 13,000 y ahí se lo compro. De por sí con eso yo se lo compré al Arti y al Chris. Y es un peor que tienen ellos, güey.
Ay, ¿cuánto va el pinche Halo? La mitad apenas. Ah,
Una skin de Rubius, güey. Está con Mico.
¿Lo volvieron a poner?
Es que de por sí el festival, uno tiene una skin de Rubius y ahí tomó como tres Mikus. Un Miku se puso a bailar en la canción de Miku Miku.
Hmm.
La que tocamos tú y yo.
Ujú.
¿O cuál tocamos? Justicia naranja.
No le puso azúcar.
Me va a doler los dedos después de esto. Chinga el chat, ya sé por qué se tarda en poner.
Objects required to escape. Regardless of the context, the goal remains the same. Escape Granny's house. Successfully do this within the span of 5 in-game days, and the protagonist is free to leave the house with their life. Fail to escape the house within 5 in-game days, and Granny will brutally kill them, ending the game.
Mío, necesito llevarse una ronda.
That's the basic rundown of Granny. It's pretty much a light survival horror game with a bunch of small puzzles to solve as you try to find all the parts necessary to escape Granny's house. I think the concept alone is already pretty cool, but the execution takes this project to a whole other level, and I can 100% understand why this game got so popular. I think Granny's reputation these days has kind of been tarnished by just how much Kid Slop YouTube content was milked out of it. But ignoring all of that, there is genuinely a really fun, tense, and interesting game here. It's not perfect, but I would be lying if I said I didn't thoroughly enjoy my time playing Granny. I really don't know what people assumed my opinions on this series were going to be, but yeah, I fuck with this game and its sequels a lot. We have a lot to go over here, considering there are 3 of these games, and all of them have way more content than any of the Slendrina games did. So let's not waste any more time and actually get into this shit. This is Granny.
Me acuerdo los principios del festival del batalla. Ya bien cabrones.
Eso sí.
Los inicios de este juego. Literalmente.
Al final sí
Me
quitaron ese
acuerdo que me
modo,
hicieron
¿no?
un mega combo, güey. O no sé si lo hicieron a arte, pero a uno de nosotros del grupo se le hicieron un mega combo que no nos dejaron hacer nada.
Normal.
Absolutely benefited heavily because of it. I wouldn't be surprised if this game or any of its sequels got another content update next year or something. So this video might actually get outdated at some point. I say all of this because I was actually curious to try an older version of Granny for this video alongside the
No, yo la fallé.
version of the game. I decided to play the
Banda
last
perseverado.
minor update before Granny got its 3rd ending added. So anytime you see Granny wearing a Christmas hat in the footage, that means you are currently watching an older version of the game being played. I mainly did this because the 3rd ending I mentioned adds a lot more shit you need to worry about for the other endings as well. So I wanted to see if a version of the game before that ending was added would be more enjoyable for completing the game's basic endings. Spoiler alert, it really wasn't. Granny versions prior to the 3rd ending update play a lot worse thanks to the crawl, an essential tool for traversal in the game, being complete garbage. In the current version of Granny, the crawl speed is essentially the exact same as the walk speed. However, these older versions make you really slow when you crawl, which ruins the flow of the game's movement in my opinion. The reason for this is because crouching used to make the player a lot harder for Granny to see, so being able to move fast while doing it would have been a little bit broken. I think the current version of Granny is a much better take on how crouching should work in these games. And I think overall, this was a good change. Even if the current version of the game makes finding some items for some endings a tiny bit harder, thanks to the extra spawn points added, I think the trade-off is absolutely worth it for the better movement. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We'll get back to the specifics of the endings a little bit later. For now, let's tackle how Granny...
Hizo que literalmente en festivales estaba el auge de Metallica y un chingo de canciones de Metallica en el modo de batalla que duraron un chingo madral de tiempo.
Alright, so as I kind of mentioned before, the goal of Granny is to escape
Yes.
using a bunch of items
So,
that are randomly scattered around Granny's house. Not all items are useful for all endings, so you kind of have to pick and choose what you think will actively help you on your current attempt. What I didn't mention, however, is that this game does not have an inventory system. This isn't some long, sprawling adventure game where having a bunch of items on you at all times would be warranted. Most Granny runs only take like an hour at the very most. That's on the high end as well. I'd say typically runs fall between the 20 to 30 minute range. So, developer had to figure out what to do here. An inventory system in theory would work, but it would risk making the game too easy. If you could just collect every key for a specific ending and then use them all at once to beat the game, it would undermine the aspects of the gameplay where you need to hide from Granny a lot. The less time you spend moving back and forth between areas, the less the game has to give you cool Granny interactions. What developer ended up settling on here for how picking up items work is a single inventory slot system. You can carry around one single item at any given time, which visually shows up in your hand as you hold it. With an item in your hand, you can either drop it, pick up a new item, which also drops the old one, or use it.
Lo voy a poner en vocalista porque una vez me confié que iba a hacerlo bien y cagué. Baterista.
At the start of a new attempt, Granny will randomly be spawned in the house at one of a few predetermined locations. From there, she moves around the house on kind of a random
Ya casi termino lo de...
main areas. On the player's end, Granny will have no idea where they are until they do something that triggers Granny to aggro towards them. The most obvious way to trigger this is to enter her line of sight. If the player walks in a room and Granny just so happens to randomly be there, chase music will trigger and she will chase the player until they either successfully hide from her or just run away from her long enough that she loses track of where you are and becomes disinterested. I think it's also important to note that when hiding from Granny, which can be done by entering closets, hiding under beds, etc., the player isn't actually 100% safe from getting attacked. If the hiding was performed outside of Granny's line of sight, the player is totally safe and Granny will leave them alone. However, if Granny sees the player hide, she will stop for a second before attacking them. Getting attacked by Granny will make the game move forward one day, bring the player back to the bedroom, and will make the player either limp or put blood effects on their screen. That limp effect that I mentioned can also go into effect if you fall from a certain shortcut in the bathroom more than once during a run. So that's also something to note. As I briefly mentioned earlier, there are 5 total days in a Granny run before it's game over for real, so it's obviously best to try and avoid getting attacked at all times. Okay, that was a bit of a tangent, but all of that information is super important just to get a feel for the game. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah! What things make Granny super pissed off? So, we have being caught in her line of sight, which we just went over, but if that was the only thing that made her go after you, the game would be pretty easy, all things considered. You really wouldn't be in active danger at all times while in the house. Developer's solution to this was to try and implement a game mechanic that he'd never really messed around with before. That mechanic? An enemy that can always hear you. That's right. Whether it's dropping a hammer onto a wooden floor, walking over a wire connected to a bell, or even opening a shitty microwave, whatever noises you make, Granny will hear them and move towards where those noises came from.
Ya subí de nivel, ya puedo descansar en paz.
Not only do you have to constantly be aware of how much noise you're making while performing any given task, you can also use this to your advantage by purposefully making noise to lure Granny towards you for all sorts of purposes. There are also tons of specific areas around the house that will creak when you walk on top of them. These are known as creaking floors, and are in the same locations every single time you play the game. Obviously, these are kind of annoying as fuck, but the more you play the game, the more you learn their placements and how to avoid them. Alright, we can finally loop this back around to the inventory system now. Hope you didn't forget about that, it's been a minute. Because Granny limits the player to holding only one item at a time, that means the player also has to be hyper aware of how much noise said items will make when they're placed down or swapped out. For example, let's say you're playing Granny and you're going for the main ending, aka the front door ending. The final step of this ending is to use the master key to unlock the door and successfully escape. The master key is completely useless until all other locks on the front door are removed first, meaning there is a very good chance you'll find this item way before you actually need it. Since Granny has no real inventory system, it's probably strategic to pick up the key when you find it and move it over to the front door so that you can pick it up again when you do need it right before the end of the game. However, in order to put that key down by the door, you're gonna have to make some noise. So you need to be aware of that and move to a safe area as soon as you place the key on the ground. That kind of quick decision making and preparation literally wouldn't be in this game if you could carry everything all at once. There would be no risk in picking up the master key earlier than you needed in the run. It would be all the reward with significantly less of the risk. That's part of the reason I love this game so much. I like that pretty much every single step you take towards making progress on an escape also hinders you in some way. It really keeps you on your toes while also feeling fair. There are many areas on the map where Granny can't get you at all. And there are also a few areas on the map that make little to no noise when you place an object down on them, such as dirt or on top of beds. This helps keep the gameplay tense when you're in the middle of trying to solve a quick puzzle or grab an item, but also gives you time to breathe in these safe areas when you plan out what your next move is. The gameplay fundamentals are very good here. Chef's kiss. The final way to trigger Granny to come after you is to put her into rage mode, which can be done a couple of ways, including picking up Teddy, the teddy bear from that really bad Slendrina game I talked about earlier. We'll go over that later though, as it's directly tied to one of Granny's endings. Granny fact. Even though she's kind of an evil bitch, Granny still cares for her creepy little house and doesn't want you going around and destroying everything in it. Because of this, if you knock over certain objects while moving around the house, such as the small side table in the starting bedroom, occasionally, Granny will stop, pick them up, and put them back to where they were originally. It's a really small detail, but it adds a little bit of character to Granny.
Oye, estamos a 3 grados.
Pretty much knows.
¿Qué pasó?
Estamos a 3 grados.
Now, hiding and running away aren't the only thing
dijo que estaba a 2.
to stay safe from Granny. Sometimes, you just want some extra time to grab an item while not having to worry about running into her. Well, do I have some good news for you. Because in the hit video game Granny, you can shoot her in the face with a shotgun. Yup! There are multiple weapons and traps that you can find around the map that when used on Granny, will knock her out for an extended period of time. This then allows you to make some crazy progress on an escape without having to worry about making too much noise or anything like that, which is obviously very useful. There's actually quite a few of these, so allow me to quickly go over all of them. The shotgun, which I mentioned earlier, is probably the most useful weapon in the game. However, it comes with some downsides. For starters, you can't just find the gun lying around on the map like any other normal item. Instead, you have to find 3 pieces of it and then take them down to the garage in order to put them together. This means you have to make up to 3 trips back and forth from the basement just to get the shotgun. Once it's built, you can load it with a single bullet and carry it around with you like any other item in the game. If you see Granny while holding the loaded gun, shooting her will take her out for the longest duration of time possible, depending on what difficulty you're on. From there, you have to find another bullet in order to use the gun again. The ammo you find around the house does not respawn, so you have to be very careful about how much you're using the shotgun while also keeping track of where the bullets you haven't used are located around the house. The crossbow is the only other projectile-based weapon in Granny, and it's also pretty good. To get it, you first need to find an item called the weapon key. Once found, you need to take said key over to a locked case that's mounted on the same wall every single time you play the game. Inside the case will be the crossbow, along with 3 tranquilizer darts. You can load the crossbow with 1 dart at a time, and it pretty much functions the exact same way to the shotgun. The main difference here is that the crossbow knocks out Granny for a shorter amount of time compared to the shotgun, and you can reuse the darts as many times as you want, so there's no need to search for ammo or worry about running out. I like that both the crossbow and the shotgun have their pretty clear strengths and
Por fin ya acabé con mi sufrimiento, Godzilla.
This comes down to how Granny gets knocked out for, or having unlimited ammunition.
Ya
The
puedes
final
descansar en
weapon
paz.
you can actually pick up and bring around with you is
Te
the
vas a
freeze
suicidar.
trap, which is obtained by opening a locked door that requires either the gun or the crossbow to
Ah,
open.
Godzilla energizado. El último
Understand
24
what the
niveles.
behind already having a weapon
Un sufrimiento.
far with the crossbow in terms of usefulness, but I did end up using it a lot of my attempts, so maybe it's better than I give it credit for. Anyway, the freeze trap is a small disc thing that you can place on the ground. Once placed, anyone who steps on it will be frozen for a short period of time. This includes the player as well, so be careful. When Granny gets aggroed on you, she will walk in a straight line towards you if possible, using the
Bueno, ya voy a descansar. Más tarde juego yo.
noise, then place the
Está bien.
trap slightly in front of you.
Es que literalmente me puse a jugar nada más para conseguir a Godzilla porque no sé si se va a ir la luz después, entonces hay que aprovechar.
This knocks her out for the same amount of time as the crossbow darts. I think the one big advantage of this item that I didn't get much use out of personally is that you can just place it down in a random hallway and Granny might just walk over it while she's on her normal path. It's still active even if you're in a completely different area of the house, so that is definitely a viable strategy. Finally, we have the sauna, which isn't an item you can pick up, obviously, but you can use it to trap Granny and knock her out for a bit. Located in the garage, you can make noise in the sauna, turn it on, and then hide in the locker located at the bottom of the steps leading out of the garage. Granny will then go downstairs, enter the sauna, and look around for a second. Once she's in there, that's your cue to exit the closet, close the sauna door, and lock it from the outside. Not only does this knock her out for a good amount of time, it also traps her in there for a little bit before she's actually knocked out, making this easily one of the best methods for getting rid of Granny for a long time. Even with that in mind though, it's still not super convenient to use the sauna, and I barely did so during my time playing Granny. It's far more convenient to just use the gun or crossbow, even if they require slightly more setup. Granny fact! There's actually 2 other ways you can knock Granny out for a bit, but they're both so insanely situational that they are never worth doing unless you just want to see them happen. For the first one, as part of the car escape ending, you can find a gasoline can to fill the car up with gas. However, the gas can also has a secret secondary function that most players will never see happen in-game. Just like in real life, if you shoot the gasoline can with the shotgun, it will explode. If you do this in front of Granny, it will knock her out just like the normal shotgun. However, doing this will permanently remove the gasoline can from your current attempt. So not only does this remove a mandatory item for one of the endings, there is also like 0 extra incentive to do this. It is very funny though, and I'm glad that it's in the game. The other very situational way to knock out Granny is to run her over with the car when you're about to escape the house with it. I had to look far and wide for footage of this, because I legitimately did not believe it was even real for a bit. You don't know how many YouTube videos are out there titled, "I ran over Granny with the car," that don't actually knock her out when they run her over. Thankfully, I did find one YouTuber who actually ended up doing this when backing up the car. So shout out to Dennis for actually proving to me that this is a real thing in the game.
I should probably open the garage first. Oh, that's not good. Wait, Granny's gone? Oh man, I got her!
Even though it is real, this is such a pointless way to knock out Granny. Like, if you're already in the fucking car, you're probably about to beat the game anyway. It's funny that it was coded at all though, so I guess I have to give developer some props for that. Now, the player has all these weapons and traps to knock out Granny. But does Granny have anything to screw over the player? Well, yes actually. She has bear traps. Granny, for some inexplicable reason, just has unlimited bear traps at her disposal. She often only drops them down after successfully hiding from her, but I swear to God, sometimes she just randomly places them on the ground for no reason as a big fuck you. If you accidentally step on a bear trap, you'll be stuck until you free yourself by holding down a button for long enough. This is something you don't want to get caught in while in the middle of a chase. That time it takes for you to get unstuck is enough time for Granny to catch up to you and knock you out. Bear traps will eventually just deactivate after around 3 minutes, and can also be disabled just by dropping an item on them, which is something I did not know until researching just now. That probably would have been useful to know like a month ago. There's technically one more weapon in Granny that I haven't mentioned yet. However, unlike all the other ones, this weapon doesn't actually knock Granny out for any amount of time. By finding the remote control item and then opening up the small closet under the main staircase, you can find a small bottle of pepper spray. It has limited uses and can make Granny blind for a short period of time. She pretty much just stops being aggroed on you and wanders around like an idiot for a little bit. It's not super useful, all things considered. I guess if it's a super early game and you have access to no other weapons yet, the pepper spray is a decent holdover, but that's about it. I'm also gonna throw this here because I don't really know how else to mention it, but on the easier difficulty options, you can gain an extra day at Granny's house, aka an extra life, if you successfully find all the pieces of a picture and put them together in the basement. Low-key though, this is kind of just a waste of time, and it's way more beneficial to just get better at the game rather than trying to locate all these picture pieces every single run. Anyway, we're done now. That's pretty much the main gameplay that Granny has to offer. We're not completely done talking about this game quite yet though. There's still a few more things I want to go over. For starters, the map design in Granny 1 is probably the best in the entire series. It's a pretty big map, all things considered, but it still feels super manageable to traverse, and there are so many little shortcuts you can quickly move around the map with. My favorite part of the map by far is this small tunnel in the basement that leads to a set of stairs on the other side of the house. This is the perfect area to bait Granny with noises, then quickly move to a completely different part of the house and gain some good distance between each other. This entire section is actually blocked off from one side on extreme difficulty, which makes the game a lot harder and makes me much sadder. The other two maps in the other Granny games are missing a lot of these cool secret pathways and shortcuts, and they feel a lot worse to play around because of it. Something that you've probably been waiting for me to talk about are the visuals, considering that they're definitely a little rough. Like, if someone were to come up to me and say, "Hey man, the Granny graphics look like shit," I would have a hard time arguing with them. However, there's a certain charm that Granny's visuals have that I think actually makes the game stand out in a unique way. Pretty much every developer game post-Lendrina looks like this. It's essentially his signature style at this point. Like, yeah, it doesn't look amazing, but it has soul, which is all that truly matters in my heart of hearts. Granny fact. Okay, this is more of an yeah fact, but it's also kind of a Granny fact, so stick with me here. If you're already familiar with Granny and its community to some extent, you may have noticed that the Granny design from the fan remake simply titled Granny Remake is in the thumbnail of this video. That's because originally there was going to be a segment dedicated to it, but I ended up scrapping it last minute. I mention this now because I feel like that game and a few other Granny fan projects missed the point of Granny and its visual identity. Like, I'll just be straight up here, the Granny design in that fan remake is not very good. I kinda understand what they were going for, but I personally think it's just too different from the original design to work. Quality of the project aside, don't get me wrong, it's a very pretty game. The identity of the original character is completely lost in that Granny redesign. I think developers' character designs and world can be reimagined in a more high definition way without completely removing all the iconic elements of his style. And I would love to see a project take a stab at that at some point. Alright, now the thumbnail isn't clickbait. Maybe I'll make a Granny bonus video talking about a few fan projects if this does well. No promises though. Moving on. For a game all about being aware of what sounds you're making at all times, the sound design in Granny isn't really anything to write home about. The ambient music is fine, the actual sound effects are fine, even Granny's iconic voice lines are admittedly just fine. It's very funny when Granny says some dumb shit like, "Wanna play hide and seek," or whatever, but that's pretty much it. I think one of the bigger issues with Granny is that Granny, the character, doesn't really have any good audio cues to let you know when she's approaching an area. This makes it super easy to turn a corner and just accidentally run into her, which can sort of feel unfair at times. Maybe if her footsteps were slightly louder, or if she had certain voice lines or made certain sounds when she was close to the player, this would be less of an issue. Even if this was something restricted to easier difficulty options, I think it'd be a good compromise. One more thing I want to talk about before we get into the last bit of this section here is just the moment-to-moment gameplay. I referred to finding a lot of the items as puzzles earlier, which is kind of true, but also not at all. It really just boils down to finding out which items do what, which is pretty self-explanatory. It is kind of like a puzzle in that right, but you'll rarely be scratching your head trying to find out what an item is used for. I think the worst part of a system like this, where there are so many items on one map and only some of them are useful for some of the endings, is that it can feel like a real kick in the nuts when you spend a long time opening up something with multiple keys, only to find out the reward for doing all of that was an item exclusive for a different ending. That's why I'm a big fan of the items that are useful on multiple endings. It keeps things balanced to a degree by limiting the number of useless items on any given run. Still though, shit like the Playhouse item spawn, where you need to find and bring over 3 individual items just to see what's inside of it, is a bit much. There's a lot of cool little item interactions that I can't get into here because I'd be here all day, but overall, you can tell a lot of care went into the individual items, even outside of the ones that are directly used for the various endings. Speaking of the various endings, the door escape ending is the original and only ending Granny had to offer when it launched back in 2017. It's my favorite ending of the 3, just for how straightforward it is. It's very obvious immediately what items are needed to open the various locks on the door, and finding those items is typically not super hard. The biggest downside to this ending in particular is the area in which the front door is located leaves you pretty vulnerable. Not only are there 4 different directions Granny could come at you from, there's also a bell tripwire in the middle of the room that you have to be cautious of the entire time. Another good thing about this ending is just how many of the keys required for it are also used for other things in the game anyway. The hammer is used for multiple different sections around the house to knock down wooden planks and gain access to different areas. The wire cutters are used to gain access to the item trapped in the jail cell, and the padlock key is also used for the car ending. It makes all the items needed to escape through the door feel super useful throughout almost the entire run. Finally, we have to talk about Teddy again. I briefly mentioned earlier that Teddy was tied to one of the endings, and that ending would indeed be the door ending. However, you actually don't need Teddy to unlock the door and escape the house. Teddy is specifically required if you want to unlock the secret ending that only plays when you place Teddy in a crib upstairs and then leave through the front door. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, do you remember when I was talking about all the ways to aggro Granny and I mentioned Teddy being one of them? Yeah, so whenever you pick up Teddy, Granny will immediately enter rage mode. This means she will know exactly where you are, your heart will begin to beat super loud in game, and her eyes will become fully red. As long as you are holding Teddy, Granny will stay in rage mode and never stop chasing you. Obviously, there's a bit of an issue here, considering we need to get Teddy from here all the way to here. So, what's the best way to go about it? Like most things in life, violence. If you just knock out Granny first using any of the weapons or traps we previously talked about, she won't be able to enter rage mode, and you should have enough time to grab Teddy and bring them upstairs. Placing Teddy in the crib will trigger a small cutscene where none other than Slendrina herself shows up as a fucking Star Wars Force ghost. Exiting out the front door after doing this will also slightly change the ending to include Slendrina. It's nothing crazy, but it's a cute little Easter egg. Next, we have the car escape ending, which is pretty easily my least favorite. I like how much time you have to spend in the garage for it, since that's one of the best places to trick Granny's AI into going the long way around the car, but other than that, this one is kind of a slog. You need pretty much the same amount of items as the door ending to get the car up and running, but the majority of them are useless for other parts of the game and are literally just for this specific ending. So it's an equivalent amount of items to collect, but with less than half of the usefulness that the door ending items have. That means you have to collect more items overall with little to no upside. It serves as a good hard mode, I guess, but the game already has difficulty options built in. So I personally would have preferred if all the escape routes were balanced around each other slightly better. Finally, we have the newest ending added to Granny as of the time I'm recording this. The Spider Cellar ending. This ending is definitely the most unique, as it serves a completely different type of challenge compared to the normal Granny gameplay. Here's the gist of it. You have to find a book located somewhere around the house. Once the book has been found, you need to take it over to Granny's bedroom and place it on a podium hidden inside of a secret bookshelf entrance. Inside of this secret room is Slendrina's mother for some reason, who has been hung up and left to rot in this random ass location. The book kinda does look like the book used to capture Slendrina and Slendrina X, but I'm not sure if that's actually what it's supposed to be in canon, or if it's just the same model being reused. Oh yeah, speaking of Slendrina's mother, Granny fact! Slendrina's mother's face texture is actually not an original image created by Developer, but it's also not some stock image from a generic horror pack or something either. No. Slendrina's mother's face texture originates from an actual Halloween mask you can still buy to this day on a website called Danger Zone. The mask is called Fat Man Zombie Mask and was edited slightly to remove some of the zombie detailing, along with adding the iconic gaping mouth. I just think it's extremely funny this texture is sourced from some random ass Halloween mask of a fat zombie for some reason. But if it works, it works. Anyway, back to the ending. So, Slendrina's mother falls to the ground after the book is placed on the podium, and from here, you need to leave the room and do something else in order to trigger Slendrina's mother's next move. After doing that and then coming back, you can watch as she slowly crawls out of the secret room and moves over to the middle of the main bedroom. Eventually, she'll stop moving and disappear, but not before dropping a key. This is the spider key, and it's used to unlock an entirely new area of the map I haven't talked about yet, the Spider Cellar. Down here, Granny is no longer a threat to us. However, something else is. Spider Mom, aka Slendrina's mother as a freaky ass spider. Unlike Granny, she can't hear anything and will ignore any noises you make. That is, unless she enters rage mode, at which point she functions identically to Granny's rage mode. All Spider Mom does when she's not ticked off is wander around the tight corridors of the cellar, and if she sees you, she chases after you. Weapons and traps are pretty much useless against her, so it's really just up to you to figure out the best way to get around her. I think Spider-Mom is a pretty good addition to the game, and it definitely helps make this specific ending way more unique than the other ones, considering just how much time you're gonna have to spend down here. The exit here is in a room near the end of the spider cellar, and it requires the least amount of items out of any of the endings. This is balanced out by the fact that you have to go back and forth throughout the spider cellar multiple times in order to successfully bring all the required items over to the exit room. Thankfully, Spider-Mom can't actually enter the room where the exit is, so once you have everything in there and ready to go, it's just smooth sailing. And that, my friends, is every single Granny ending. Pretty decent variety in this one. There's a few other things we could talk about here, like the harder difficulty options, nightmare mode, and some of the other smaller things, but none of those are that crazy, being fair. Like, you wanna know what nightmare mode is? It's literally granny.exe, where the entire house and all of the characters are fully coated in blood. And there's evil fucked up ghost rats that do ghost rat things, like bite you and alert Granny to your location. Fucking ghost rats. We've been on this game for long enough. It's time to wrap up here. But don't worry, folks, because the fun isn't over yet. We've still got 2 more of these things to go over. It's time to shift our focus to the next installment, Granny Chapter 2. Actually, before we do that, I think there's something else we can do first.
Hey kids, it's me, Puppet, yeah! Yeah, today I'm gonna be showing you all these cool Granny toys that I bought for a very reasonable price on eBay! This is gonna be so much fun! Yay! Yay! Yay!
What the fuck are you doing? You know, I was kind of doing like a Puppet Steve bit. I have asked you to make this video for almost a year straight. And this is how you do it? Get your shit together right now. All right, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Anyway, why do you look like that? I'm leaving. Okay then. Let's review some toys. All right, here we are at the Puppet Steve set, or the Puppet set, whatever you want to call it. Hey, I'm not to pat myself on the back too much, but I think I did a pretty good job, right? Custom background, same shitty table, I mean the gloves. Today, for this segment, we are going to be looking at the Granny toys, specifically antagonist. And I don't mean like Spider-Mom, where there's an entire separate section of the map just dedicated to them. I mean another antagonist like Granny that walks around the house trying to kill you. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, please give a warm welcome to Grandpa. Did you clap? Come on, do it. I'm serious. Go on. Give him a warm welcome. All right, there you go. Good job. Awesome. But, yeah, he didn't hear any of that. Grandpa is kind of deaf. We'll get into that and so much more as we dive headfirst into Granny Chapter 2 and everything it has to offer. I'm talking 2 brand new escape endings alongside 1 returning one, some subtle but effective changes to the gameplay, and a whole new map and threat to deal with. This is Granny Chapter 2. Granny Fact: this game was actually originally titled Granny the Next Chapter, but as far as I can tell, this was only in the actual game itself. On the App Store, I think it was always called Granny Chapter 2, although I could be